Hey y'all, we are back again, but we're gonna take a little detour. I was in my prayer time, and I really just felt like God wanted me to. I just really fell in love with the book of Ruth, and I was reading it, and just felt led to do a video. So we're gonna take a little break in Genesis. We are gonna finish it. Trust me, I am ready to finish Genesis too. Even though it's been so good and it's starting to get a little juicier. I want to talk about Ruth though, because God just really just showed me some things, and I just want to share what He put on my heart, and hopefully it blesses you. So let's dive in. So if you don't know anything about Ruth, Ruth is a chapter in the Bible in the Old Testament, and it's really, I think it's like 4 chapters. It's a really short book, but it's about Ruth, who is a Moabite. And so it starts off in the first 2 chapters. We're not going to dive into every chapter. We're just going to do chapter 2. So basically, to summarize the beginning of Ruth, it starts off actually with Naomi and her husband Elimelech, and they had 2 sons, and they were living in, I believe, Bethlehem at that time. And then there was a famine, so they left and they went to the Moabite land. And there in that land, the 2 sons had married wives. One was Ruth and one was named Orpah. And so unfortunately, the Elimelech dies there in the foreign land. And then not too long after that, his 2 sons died. We don't know why they died, but they died. And so now Naomi is left with her 2 daughter-in-laws. And she was like, hey, I heard God is doing some things back in, because they were experiencing a famine as well, and doing some things in my homeland, so I am gonna go back. And so basically she releases her daughter-in-laws to go back to their own mother and daughters to restart their lives, to marry again and all this stuff. But they beg her, they beg and they plead with her. They're like, no, we don't want to go back, we want to go with you, this is what we want to do. And then they go back and forth a few times. Orpah decided to go back to her family, but it was Ruth. Ruth was determined. She was like, I am not going back. Your people are my people. Your God is my God. I am with you to the end with this. And she just begged and pleaded to the point Naomi said, okay. So they go back to Naomi's homeland. So in chapter 2, we see that, because we see that she goes back to the homeland. Now they're widows. So they didn't have a husband, they didn't have land, they didn't have anything. They had to go back there and basically fend for themselves a little bit. So we see in Ruth chapter 2, Ruth asks Naomi, can she go gather grain for themselves, for their family, so they have something to eat? And Naomi grants it, right? Because they have to, again, feed themselves. They lost all their husbands, the father figure, no land, nothing. They go back empty-handed, right? And so we see that. So Ruth goes out to work out in the land. Now this is something I want to pause real quick. We got to talk about, because I think it's very, very important, is that we have to understand there's a history between the Moabite people and the Israelites. And they go all the way back to Lot. So if you guys remember, I don't know, it's something to check out. When Lot is leaving God and destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, remember that time we talked about when Abraham pleaded on behalf of, if there can be 10 people, where there were, that didn't happen, right? And so Lot's daughters decide to sleep with him. And they were like, hey, how are we going to continue our family legacy? And they sleep with him, and then they have sons. And Moab is one of the sons, Moabites, from that. So they basically was born out of incest. And so the Israelites did look kindly upon the Moabite people. They looked down upon them. There were history there. It was just like tension right there. So Ruth, who is saying, listen, your God is my God, your people my people. She is walking into something she don't know what she's walking into. She don't know how she's going to be received. Yes, she married an Israelite and he passed away, but it still doesn't take away, or I would think some people can view as the stain of her history and her ancestry on her. And so that is something to take in consideration in what we're going to talk about. So I just wanted to put that out. There is tension. She is going into a place, but she don't know how she's going to be received, looked at. She just know, hey, I'm walking by faith. And so Ruth does it. She goes and she leaves, and she goes and find where she can grain. So basically what it was is that you have people that own the land, and then they actually were harvesters They actually get the grain for whoever owned the land. Then you have the people that were poor in the city that can go after the harvesters to get what they can get, and as well to try to, so they could work to eat. So Ruth was one of those people. It was after the people that owned the land and their servants went, that she was able to go behind them to try to glean what she can so she can feed her and Naomi. And so she goes to a field. She's working behind the servants, and then she ended up in the field of a man named Boaz. And so Boaz just so happened to walk up to the field and was greeting his servants and all those things, and he noticed Ruth, and he was like, the question in verse 5, in Ruth 2 verse 5, he says, Boaz asked his servant in charge of the harvesters, to whom does this young woman belong? And that harvester began to say, hey, this is the young woman that came with Naomi, and she asked, could she basically partake and glean as much as she can. And one thing I noticed about the harvester is he gave this information, which I found was interesting, that she was basically saying she was a hard worker, that she has not started working. She only took a short little break underneath the hut, but other than that, she's been working hard. And so Boaz pulled Ruth aside, and he said this to her. He said, listen carefully, my dear. Do not leave to gather grain in another field. You need not to go beyond the limits of the field. You may go along beside my female workers. So he basically pulled her aside and said, hey, I want you to stay in this field. I want you to stay with my female workers. And Ruth does this beautiful thing. She kneels before him with her forehead to the ground, which is just a sign of honor, right? We've seen this in the Old Testament. And said to him, why are you so kind and so attentive to me, even though I am a foreigner? Why are you so kind and attentive to me, even though I'm not of your own? Why are you so kind and attentive to me, even though I know how your people feel about my people? She basically just asked him, why are you showing me this kindness and you don't have to? And Boaz replies in verse 11, he says this, I have been given a full report of all that you have done for your mother-in-law, following the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother, as well as your homeland, and came and live among a people you did not know previously. So I love that part in verse 11, because he's basically saying, I understand the courage it took, but not only for you to come with your mother, like to leave your homeland, because Ruth's homeland, they were not like the Israelites where they believed in a God and they believed in many gods, right? And not just that she could have started over where she was at, but she left everything that she knew. She left everything that was known to her to come and really be with her mother-in-law. And he just honors that. He encourages her, and he's like, man, that took great courage. And he says this, may the Lord, in verse 12, may the Lord reward your efforts. May your acts of kindness be repaid fully by the Lord of Israel, from whom you have sought protection. So he was like, may God just bless you, the God that you came to seek protection from, because you should be rewarded for that act of what you're doing. And then she goes into, this is what she says in verse 13. You really are being kind to me, sir. For you have reassured and encouraged me, your servant, even though I'm not one of your servants. So this is the second time we see Ruth say, hey, even though I'm not one of your people, you're taking the time to encourage me. And so that let her know, she said, if I'm encouraged, at some point it could have been some disencouragement along the way. He reassured her. He had to be reassured to confirm this very thing that she probably questioned along the way. Here he is pouring life into her and acknowledging her for what she did. And so it was just this beautiful moment of what Boaz recognized. Now, this is another thing about Boaz. Boaz's lineage is Rahab. Well, according to the Bible, if I'm wrong, again, I'm not a scholar, but I believe that Rahab is in his lineage. If you don't know about Rahab, Rahab is when if you ever heard of Jericho and the walls falling down, that is when the God is giving the land to the people and they're taking it, and he's telling them to walk around the walls. But before that, he sends spies, and Rahab hides the spies that were in Jericho and help them get out, and they can go back to the people and say, hey, we can take this. And so Rahab and become a part, even though she was a foreigner, a part of the Israelites people. And that Boaz is in her lineage. So maybe he understood more than anybody how much courage it took for her to become into a foreign land, to live among people she didn't know, to take the courage of what she did, because that was in his legacy. That's just a side note. That could be it, maybe not. But it's something to think about, because he honors her in such a way. This is another thing Boaz did. Okay, so in verse 14, later during the mealtime, Boaz said to her, come here and have some food. Dip your bread in the vinegar. So she sat beside the harvesters, and then he handed her some roasted grain. She ate until she was full, and then she saved the rest. This is very key, right? Because if everybody was eating, I read this, I was like, what was Ruth doing? She didn't go and sit with everybody else. It wasn't until Boaz invited her, hey, you can come and eat until you're full, and then handed her the grain. And then she saved the rest, and we'll understand later why she did save the rest. And then when she got up to gather grain, this is verse 15, Boaz told his male servants, let her gather grain even among the bundles. Do not chase her off. He basically saying, hey, let her gather. So they're bundles as they're gathering the grain, if I can slow down. It's like they tie them all together. So what he's saying, hey, even let her gather among that. Even let her gather among what we're taking in as well. He also tells them in verse 16, make sure you pull out ears of grain for her and drop them so she can gather them. Do not tell her not to. Basically, he's saying, do not run her off. Do not chase her away. I'm giving her permission. Matter of fact, I'm going to bless her in what she's gathering today. Right? And so after he told her that, she began to gather grain. And she gathered a ton that day because of the blessing of Boaz and what he did. Then she goes back home to Naomi after she threshed out her grain, which just gave them the grain to actually make it, so they can make it and eat it and do what they need to do with it. And she goes back, and Naomi's like, where did you gather? Like, did you figure out how did you gather much? And she told the story how she ended up at the field of Boaz and everything he said. And Naomi's like, oh my God, praise God for this, right? Because she basically, that Boaz is a family redeemer. See, a family redeemer is somebody that is really usually prominent, financial influence, in among their family. But not just that, they have to be willing to redeem family members. So let's just break this down. Naomi lost her husband. Because Naomi and her sons died, there's no one to carry on the lineage, the legacy of the family. And so when they died, they lost all the property, the land, anything that was tied to them in inheritance were gone. A family redeemer can marry a widow or redeem the land for the family member that died, that passed away. And so in this case, we're seeing Naomi saying, hey, he's somebody that may be willing to carry on the lineage of Elimelech and their sons, and that, if Ruth gets remarried to him, we'll see that later. But basically that's what a family redeemer did, is a way to redeem what was lost, which was through the property and all that, and even just the legacy of the family through the children of inheritance, all that. So that's what a family redeemer redeems. It's all in the name. And so Naomi in verse 20 says to her daughter-in-law, may he be rewarded by the Lord because he has shown loyalty to the living on behalf of the dead. Then Naomi said, this man is a close relative of ours. He is a guardian, a family redeemer. And then Ruth then begins to give Naomi the food that she ate when he asked her to sit down. She ate till she was full, and then so that Naomi could have something to eat. she gave her the rest of the roasted grain and everything like that. And it continues, the rest of the chapter continues just to talk about how Ruth stays in Boaz's field until they finish the harvesting. Okay, so when God was showing me this chapter, I was like, man, this is good. I've read Ruth plenty of times. Mainly, a lot of times, Ruth is probably more showcased as a romantic, or not maybe romantic, but like a love story, right? But when I was reading it this time, I took two things from it. One, I took it as a leadership standpoint. So one, what I loved about Boaz is that he set the tone. He set the tone with Ruth. He invited her to sit down to eat. He told her she can get water when she was thirsty. He made sure that his harvesters knew that she can, take from the bundles, and told them not to chase her away. So what does that mean? He set the tone how everybody else is supposed to treat Ruth. No one was gonna go against the boss. He set the tone. He's like, hey, this is the culture. This is what we're gonna do, and this is how I am showing you that, because they all can see she has favor with him, and she's in the end with him. And I said, man, that's such a good leadership point. That we as leaders, how we treat people, or just, I think we're all leaders, we're all ministers, right? But it set the tone for how other people can do it too. So I was like, okay. Also, the other thing that I loved about Boaz is that he partnered with the prayer that he said over her. He said, basically, may God bless you. And especially the God you were coming to seek protection from. He partnered with that by blessing her. He partnered with that by protecting her. And I was just so moved, y'all, because it was just one of the things that I'm like, just go, like, I was like, Lord, let me be so partnered with the prayer. We just can't pray just to pray. I mean, you can, but it ain't gonna do anything. It's when we partner with the praise, when we step out on faith, that things begin to move. It is faith that moves God. And so that's what he did. He just didn't say a little nice prayer, go about your way. No, he began to partner with the very thing he was praying over her. Like the very thing that he wanted God to do, he did himself. So God worked through Boaz in that very way. And I think we have to partner with what we're praying about. We have to, so if you're, say for instance, we'll just give this up. If you're a partner, you're praying about starting a new business, what are you doing in the natural to partner with the supernatural? That's sort of two things that have to go together and play with each other. And so we have to do that. I also love the word because we learn about people without them saying so much. We learn about their character. We learn a lot about Ruth. Obviously, she's brave, she's courageous, she's full of faith, but she is also just a young girl. I don't know how old she is, but she's also a woman who walked into a situation that I imagine, this is how I imagine Ruth. When she made a decision, Naomi was like, yo, okay, that's fine. We're good. You can come with me. At some point, I wonder did she begin to question herself. Like, oh man, did I make the right decision? I don't know, all those things. Real, right? That's real emotion. That's human emotion. And so I think that part of it is like always in my head, like at one point. And so when I read the part where she felt encouraged and he reassured her, that made me think, okay, well maybe could have been doubt. It could have been fear. It could have been anything. And yet God met her exactly where she was at and spoke exactly what she needed to in that moment to be encouraged. So we can also take from this, maybe that very word that God is giving you to give somebody, the very thing he's telling you to share, could be the very thing that encourages them, that reassures them, that helps them along the way. So that's one thing we can do. We can partner with our prayers. We can be obedient to what God has called us to do. But also as leaders, as children of God, when we say leaders, people think like obviously you're leading people. But I think as children of God, we set the tone. Especially if you are in a managerial position in your place or you're an owner of your business, we set the tone. Let's all be Boaz and set the tone of just looking like Jesus, right? And I think that is what God is calling us to do. And it was just such a touching thing. Oh, sorry, going back to my point. Well, one of the points I was trying to make, because I start going off in my world, is that Ruth not only thought of herself, There was something intentional. If we just really think about it, it was something intentional in the way that she was like, hey, not only am I going to feed myself, I'm going to tuck this away so when I get home, Naomi can have something to eat. Man, we learn how kind Ruth is, how generous she is, how full of faith she is. And it's just like, I see why she get a book in the Bible. And not only that, she's in the lineage of David, which is in the lineage of Jesus. And she was a Moabite, which if you look at, again, what we talk about, how Moabites came about, she shouldn't have been in the lineage. But it's a thing of like, man, when we live by faith, we step into what God has called us to do. Things change. And so those are just my takeaways. I hope it blessed you guys in some kind of way, because it sure enough blessed me. I'm like, Lord, I am partnering with my prayers. I am setting the tone, and I am being kind and full of faith and walking by faith, knowing that you are answered my prayers. Know that you already know what I need when I need it. And that's what we see with Ruth. He knew what she needed when she needed it, always provided. Right? Even if I highly encourage, read the rest of the book of Ruth, because it is so good, because her family is redeemed, but we see this devotion that she has to Naomi and to God, and it's just awesome. And I use the word beautiful a lot, and I just one of the things I love about the word of God is how something that happened thousands and thousands of years ago can be teaching us today and how we can show up in our lives. So all right, guys, that is it. Thank you so much for taking time to watch this video, and I will see you soon.